Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Night Wars. It is October 23rd, 1995. We are live, as always, with WCW Nitro at the Von Braun Civic Center in Huntsville, Alabama. With me today is Joseph the Body Rojas. Joseph, how are you?
That's a horrible nickname. I don't even like that one remotely.
Well, it's what you got.
All right, fair enough.
Because this is
I'm
live.
good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I can't edit this.
Yeah, you can't edit this even remotely. You can't accidentally turn off the recording instead of hitting unmute. You can't do any of those things.
Things happen. Mistakes are made. But not tonight, because boy, do we have a banger of a night for you. That is sarcasm. I guess sort of. Let's get straight into it. We start with a Randy Savage versus Kurosawa match. Kurosawa is with the Colonel Robert Parker. Of note, Savage slaps Parker's cigar out of his mouth. Kurosawa works Savage's arm through the match, which is apparently legitimately injured. Savage wins on a really awkward elbow drop. Randy Savage defeats Kurosawa 8-minute match. Joseph, give me the deets.
Yeah, so actually interesting that you mentioned the injured arm. I meant to mention that last week. I actually don't even have it in my notes this week. I just remember because you mentioned it. So when you and I went through this, we kind of binged a lot of this stuff before we ever started this podcast. From I think it's last week on, it feels like 6 months of Macho Man having a very clearly hurt arm. And you could see it. He doesn't use as much. When he does, he winces. He's an absolute stud for going through with it and wrestling with it. So if you're one of the individuals, I know a few people I've reached out to who listen to this podcast, and they actually will watch along with our podcast, you're going to see this for a long time. That all being said, Mach comes out. So this is the episode right before Halloween. Mach is coming out, and he's wearing actually bright orange head to toe with what looks like camo print. It's kind of Halloween inspired a little bit. He's going to have an even better one at Halloween Havoc. It's a really nice outfit. It's not his best outfit. I'd give it a B+. As far as the match goes, it's a really fun, high action opener. There's nothing, that you would write home about. There's nothing that I would say you have to really, really see this match. But if you're just watching the episode, and I'm sure if you were watching this in 95, this is a fun way to start the show. Gets a B from me. Obviously, Mach wins with the elbow, and not really a whole lot more I can ask for. It is a little bit weird that Kurosawa is with Colonel Robert Parker. I think I've said before. I don't know if they've ever really given us a reason for it, but it is what it is.
The elbow drop at the end, a little awkward because Kurosawa is clearly not in position, and he really has to contort himself to get into position. It doesn't look great, but it is a Macho Man elbow drop. How can you want anything more than that? But yeah, two good guys, two good performers. The match was fine. Don't really have more to say about it than that. Going on, though, we have a lot to say because we have a Dungeon of Doom promo, and it is a doozy. We have the Taskmaster, and we are introduced to his master, the master, his, in Kevin Sullivan's Boston accent, father, and they have found a Yeti, or as Eric Bischoff likes to call it, a Yeti, and it was in a 13-ton block of ice. Joseph, let's talk about this.
I actually have one note for this, and it just says, "Oh God, let Scott explain." I give this whole segment an F. It is not good.
This segment is insane. You're right. I really don't have more to say about it than what I just said. I think I pretty much explained it. I mean, do you feel that I pretty much gave the explanation?
Yeah, it's just maddening. And this episode, we had a really nice opener, and then it's just gonna just kind of go off the deep end. And I don't think I'm not saying this in I know this sounds really negative. I understand that. I really think they had these grand visions, and the execution is really not very good. It's impractical even for 1995, and it's going to just, completely plummet rock bottom. I don't think anybody went out there and tried to do anything bad. It just doesn't work.
I think you'd agree that we've both been pretty hot on WCW up to this point. You know, they've had some down nights, but for the most part, they put on pretty good shows. We've said again and again and again how they're putting on pay-per-view quality matches every Monday night. But there comes a time before the NWO where they really go downhill for a while. And I think this and Halloween Havoc are kind of the beginning of the downhill for a while. And the Yeti is case in point that. This is ridiculous. They found a Yeti, again, as Bischoff likes to call it, in a 13-ton block of ice. This is their insurance policy against Hulkamania for Halloween Havoc. What the hell?
You know, you're talking mad smack about it. I'm gonna pretend like I wasn't. But we haven't even seen the Yeti yet.
And oh boy, will we. Let's move on. Let's move on. You're right. We need to move on because we don't even know what the Yeti looks like yet. But we will. Oh, we will. After that, though, we got Mean Gene. And he's back with Don Corleone Hogan. Hogan rips off his neck brace. Doesn't need it. He's the Hulkster. He's running wild. Pasta mania all through him. He talks about riding motorcycles and that Sting, Savage, and Luger need to get it together. The Hulkster is back. Team Hulkamania better get in line. Let's go, brother.
So remember when I said they just kind of fall off the deep end? This is a continuation of that. So I like that you called him Don Corleone Hulk Hogan because that absolutely is who he is right here. He has an exact quote that is, "I fear no evil. The only thing to fear is evil itself," which is, unless I'm mistaken, supposed to be the only thing to fear is fear itself, which I believe is it's a
FDR.
Is FDR? I thought it was his wife.
No, I think it's FDR. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Are you sure it's not his wife?
I'll correct it if it isn't. So why don't you say both? It's FDR and then say it's his wife, and you'll figure out in the finished product which one
It's
it is.
Eleanor Roosevelt. That's who did it. Eleanor Roosevelt's the one who made the quote.
Okay.
Okay. So here's what we should do. It's a nice little game in the middle. Just decide. I'll put a little poll on Spotify, and then you can find out at the end of the episode. There you go. Anyways, moving on. It's an F. This is a bad segment. It's not good.
Yes. I can't really say more than that. I think you're right. You accused me early on of when we first started this, I said that I was tired of Hulkamania, and then I liked every segment after that because it was just peak absurd Hogan. And I corrected myself. I said it's not necessarily that I'm tired of the gimmick. I'm tired of Hogan's formulaic matches. You know, the Hulking up, the leg drop, he never loses clean, all that kind of stuff. I'm starting to get tired of Hulkamania now too. This has been 2 or 3 weeks now where we've just had bad Hulk Hogan promos. They're not over the top good. They're over the top bad. I'm not a fan of Don Corleone Hogan. Dark Hogan, not my thing.
Well, there's nothing that makes him dark. I think that's really the problem. The idea is great. The idea of a Hogan that has to go to a dark place to defeat this enemy is a phenomenal idea. Because Hogan is, at this point, if you look at 2023, look back at Hogan, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of negatives to say about him. But when you're talking about this point, most fans don't know these things. Hulk Hogan is Americana. He is, Captain America, right? And that's kind of the whole point in the Avengers is that Captain America eventually has to go against the government to be able to defeat the enemy. He has to go to a dark place, right? That's kind of the idea here too. It's a great idea. It's just really poorly executed.
Not a fan of Dark Hogan. At least not yet. Moving on, we have Eddie Guerrero and Mr. JL with Alex Wright versus Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko. Eddie was supposed to be teaming with Alex Wright, but Alex is injured. We see him with a brace on his leg. He's on crutches. During the match, we cut to backstage where Scott Norton and the Shark are going at it. Scott Norton lost the match because Shark fell on him more than a month ago, but I guess we needed a match for next week, so we're bringing that back, and they're going at it. Back to the match, though, Eddie Guerrero and Mr. JL defeat Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko in a 10-minute match. Joseph, tell me more.
I actually have a note that says, thank God this can cleanse the palate, because like the minute I saw all 4 men, I was like, yeah, this should be fun. And it is. It's a very fun match. I give it a B. There's nothing crazy about it, but it's a great showcase of all 4 men. Obviously, I think we both kind of agree that Mr. JL probably should have just been Jerry Lynn. But I do like Mr. JL, all the negatives considered. One interesting note on it is that Alex Wright actually kind of cheats in this. Like I think he trips up one of, I think it's Dean Malenko. He trips up Dean Malenko with his crutch. And so he kind of helps JL win that way. So that's kind of interesting because Alex Wright has been very, very much a good guy, blonde baby face, very, the standard good guy that you would have. And so this is, I don't know if they're going to do anything with this. I know eventually Alex Wright becomes a bad guy. I don't know if this is the turn to that, but it's an interesting note. I don't know if they'll carry it on in the next few weeks. And then after the match, Pillman comes out of nowhere and hits Eddie Guerrero with a DDT. So I think the segment overall is fun. I think the Guerrero bit is a little bit weird, Pillman coming out hitting with a DDT, but I think the segment's fun. It's definitely better than the last two things we've watched.
Yes. I mean, you put these 4 guys in a ring, you're going to get good results. I agree with you. I like Jerry Lynn, the wrestler. I think he's a good wrestler. I think he's fun to watch. I don't like the Mr. JL gimmick. I wish they had done something better with him. But if I'm just talking about the match and them going at it and having a good time, certainly the best thing I think we've seen so far. And, going through and looking at the match card for both nights, or for WCW and WWF, might be the best thing we see all night. So buckle up, boys and girls, because it don't get any better. You're right about the Flying Brian DDT. I guess we need to start. Flying Brian's in a feud with Ric Flair. I guess we need to start a new feud with Eddie Guerrero too. I mean, Flying Brian certainly seems like someone who belongs in their cruiserweight division that they're starting. So I guess it makes sense that he's getting into a feud with Eddie, but we already got him in a feud. How many feuds does Flying Brian Pillman need?
Well, it's almost like he's a bit of a loose cannon.
Whoa.
Huge.
Big. That's a little foreshadowing for you, everybody. You'll find out more about that later. But right now, we got a match. We got Lex Luger. We got Sting. We got the Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry. Commentary table talks about the previous night's In Your House. The WWF In Your House was the night prior. We talk about it because we got to talk some smack. That's apparently what we like to do at WCW. They call it In Your Outhouse. And if that wasn't clear enough, they talk about how it smelled like poop. Wonderful. Very classy, guys. Of other note, Sherry looks at pictures of Colonel Robert Parker and kisses them because we won't let that die, despite my hope and my prayers that it will. Lex Luger and Sting defeat Harlem Heat. 8-minute match. Joseph, talk the herd away.
It's interesting because it sounds like you really didn't like this. I thought it was fine overall. I gave it a B. I liked the match. I thought all the matches that were on Nitro were good. It's really just some of the promos and segments that really were, where it fell off. First off, I think, Harlem Heat's a great tag team. It's really one of the few actual tag teams WCW has, but they've got more than WWF, that's for sure. And they're really fun together. I think Sister Sherry adds a great dynamic to them. There's a point where Sister Sherry, it looks like, and I'm speculating here, it looks like some of her demons get the better of her in a few months to years, and she just looks a little bit haggard. I don't know if that's true. I definitely know it wasn't easy to be her in a male dominated, industry. She's always, to my knowledge, been a very, very wonderful person. That being said, I think she looks great with them. She has a great outfit with this. She does the part. I know that you hate the Robert Parker and Sister Sherry stuff, and I don't disagree, but she does a great job of pushing it, whether we would like it or not. I mean, she's really, really selling it, how much she's in love with him and stuff. And it's weird because he's not even part of this. Sting and Lex Luger, I think, do a great job in this match too. I think they bounce off of Harlem Heat well. Both of them will have a lot of matches with these individuals in the next few years. And I think each time it's just fun to watch. Sting's wearing actually Hulkster red and yellow. And surprisingly, it looks much better on him than it does on Hulk Hogan. So I think we should call it Stinger red and yellow. It gets an A+ for me, Scott. There's a moment where Giant and Sullivan actually come in to attack, and then everything just kind of derails after that. They come in and attack, and then Mach comes out, and then Hogan, and that's kind of where the segment falls for me. But overall, I think it's good. There's a moment you actually mentioned on the commentary where you mentioned that they kind of are a bit classless in some of their commentary. There's one that I think is weird, and I'm going to probably single these out a lot in the next, dear God, however long we do this podcast, because there's commentary that I think was unnecessary even at the time. And I know people go, well, it's 1995, blah, blah, blah. I get it. So there's a moment where Bobby, being the heel, and Sherry's the heel too, he calls her beautiful. And Bischoff is like, you're insane. I can't believe you'd say that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why though? Like, she's not an unattractive person. She's supposed to be a crazy person, but it's like a weird thing. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago about it's difficult to be someone like her in a male dominated industry, because it's not just her, it's other women. And we're going to get to one soon. I've actually got it written out that I freaking hate. Where it's like, why do you have to make these comments? Like, you can make a comment that says this person's insane. You could do something like that, but it's the weird, God, they're absolutely ugly and horrible to look at kind of comments that I'm just like, dear Lord, like, who thought this is a good idea? And imagine you're one of these women, and I assume you want to show your family the stuff you've been in, and they get to hear these people talk about you like this on air. I don't know. It's just bad all around. But as far as the match goes, it gets a B. The segment afterwards, it's whatever. It's crazy mayhem, and then it kind of just closes out the show.
Going back to one of your first comments, you said that it didn't seem like I really liked the match. I liked the match. The match is fine. Again, I say fine a lot on this podcast. I'm realizing as I record it, that's kind of my standard. It was good. Maybe I need to open a thesaurus and find other words for fine, but I didn't dislike it. I mean, Lex isn't the greatest wrestler in the world, but Sting and Harlem Heat are great. Stevie Ray also maybe not the greatest wrestler, but I should say Sting and Booker T, great. Some of the all-time greats. Luger and Stevie Ray, fine, good, all right. Adequate wrestlers. I guess it was just kind of all of the stuff that was going on, the in your outhouse comments, the Sister Sherry comments, the keeping this weird love affair with her and Colonel Robert Parker going. Just the whole thing coalesced together to be just displeasing to me. I don't know. It was fine. It was okay. It was adequate. I'm going to try and find some more words for it, but let's move on. Because after the match, Giant choke slams Luger and Sting. Savage and Hogan run out. Hulkamania runs wild on the Giant. Giant is on the back foot. My God, Hogan's going to do it. He's going to defeat the Giant. But Dungeon of Doom interferes, and all hell breaks loose. And, Joseph, most importantly, the ice chunk explodes. And what the hell is that?
I've got no comment, man. I mean, what do you want from me?
Well, we get a glimpse, Joseph. We get a glimpse of the Yeti.
This is one of the most infamous moments in wrestling history, specifically in WCW history. It's not great. I think anybody who really knows WCW is going to go, yeah, we know what you're talking about. It's horrible. But we did get a glimpse. I mean, we got a glimpse.
We did indeed. And I didn't like what I saw, but we're going to see the whole damn enchilada on Halloween Havoc. So if you're not a subscriber to our Patreon and you want to hear our thoughts on Halloween Havoc 1995, and we're going to have some thoughts on Halloween Havoc 1995, and most of them are not going to be positive, join that Patreon, give that a listen. But that's really it for WCW. We're done for the night, Joseph.
Well, we're done for the night on this program, but not for the night completely.
Wow. What a segue. Because you're right, we are not done for the night. We still got WWF Raw at the Keystone Center. This is spelled Centre because we're in Canada, ladies and gentlemen. Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. And we start, Joseph, with a 20-man battle royale match to be the number one contender for the WCW Intercontinental title. It's a mess, and I'm going to let you handle it. Go for it, my friend.
Yeah. So Battle Royal. I do like battle royals, especially, I mean, who doesn't love like the Royal Rumble, right? Battle royals are fun if they're done well. I think this is not the best use. I don't know. I struggle to be hypocritical of it, or rather critical of it, just because I understand what they're trying to do here, right? They're doing a battle royal for an IC title match, which I think is a good idea, right? You have this weird thing where you have a new champion, Shawn Michaels, had to kind of vacate it. And then all the shenanigans that we talked about that happened on In Your House 4. So I get it, right? There's a lot. They're trying to figure out how to move forward. I just think that like WWF's roster is so uninspiring, I would say, at this moment, that none of these individuals really seem like people that I want to see challenged. Well, I wouldn't say none of them. I would say the two that they have to finish this match, which is Owen Hart and Marty Jannetty. I think that's a very good. These are the two who are going to finish this match. Marty Jannetty, he's kind of got a little bit of momentum from returning. Also, they're never going to do this, but there is kind of the storyline of him and Shawn Michaels, and that they were together. So now he could say, well, you know what, Shawn Michaels can't be champion. I know Razor's champion, but I wanted a chance at it. I think that kind of works if they were to do that, but they don't. Owen Hart is a plug and play kind of wrestler. I think, we talked about how WWF sometimes doesn't utilize him properly. I think they know that about him for sure at this point. They know if they need a strong match, put Owen in it. They know if they need a real quick championship contender, put Owen in it. So I think that works really well. And I think Owen absolutely deserves to be in this spot. He does a great job in this. Eventually, British Bulldog beats up Jannetty, and then Owen throws him out, and Owen wins. Overall, the grade gets a C for me. I would say most battle royals probably will, because there's so much mess in a battle royal. There's so many individuals who are barely in. There's so many individuals who are kind of not equipped to be in a match for longer than 5 to 8 minutes. So they're burnt out, and they're kind of sitting in the corner, throwing little fake punches just to kind of show, hey, I'm still in this match. So it's, battle royals can only really be so good. When a battle royal is great, it's usually if number one, you've given it enough time. Something like the Royal Rumble has about an hour. So you have enough time to enjoy what you're watching and really be able to break it up into segments. With this, everybody's already in the ring, so you don't have that much time. It's too cluttered. And then usually the most fun part is when it gets down to the last few individuals, because now everybody that you're seeing has a shot, and you can do the teases. Is he out? Is he not out? All that stuff. So it gets a C for me. There's nothing too amazing about it, but I wouldn't say there's anything overly negative about it. It's fine. It's just kind of whatever. I personally think they could have just as easily said, we're going to have a number one contenders match for the IC title, and it's going to be Owen Hart versus Marty Jannetty, and I would have been just as invested, if not more invested, personally.
So this was a 20-minute, 7-second match. And you're right. It was long. It was unnecessary. They use pretty much their entire roster for the first match of the night, which doesn't bode well for the rest of the night for WWF Raw. We have, I'll just give you the list. We have Owen Hart. We have Aldo Montoya. We have Bam Bam Bigelow. We have Barry Horowitz. We have Bob Holly. We have Duke DeRossi. Did I say that right, Joseph?
Your guess is as good as mine at this point.
We got Duke DeRossi, I guess. We got Fatu. We got Hakushi. We got Henry O. Godwin. We got Hunter Hearst Helmsley. We got Isaac Yankem, DDS. We got John Pierre Lefouf. We have Kama. We have King Kong Bundy. We have Marty Jannetty. We have Rad Radford. We have Savio Vega. We have Sid. We have Skip. We have the 1-2-3 Kit. That's everybody.
Yeah, I mean, they probably could have just done this with 10 people. I mean, there's at least 10 people on that list. You could have just made it, and it would have been just as fine.
Actual legitimate contenders for the Intercontinental title, not just anyone they could find on the street and in the back, like in the locker room.
You could have done Hunter Hearst Helmsley, 1-2-3 Kid, Savio Vega. I think is a very good option. I kind of forgot about him when I was reviewing this. Honestly, Henry O. Godwin, I think, is fine for it. I think you could have him because he's a notable fixture at your time at this time. But like Radford, why? I'm not saying anything negative about the individual or the wrestler, but he's just not on the same, same plane right here. You've pushed Fatu, you've pushed Hunter Hearst Helmsley. You haven't pushed him. You haven't pushed Barry Horowitz. There's no reason for them to be in there. Barry Horowitz maybe has like the dark horse that isn't going to win, but like you could have probably just done 10 and gotten away with it. But honestly, I think just go Owen versus Marty, and it would have been a great match.
The end of the match really kind of picks up really where the most interesting part of the match is. We also have some interference by British Bulldog, so Owen doesn't necessarily win clean. It ended, I thought, fairly well. You didn't need the 8, 10, 12, 15 minutes before that. You're right. We could have just had a Marty Jannetty Owen Hart match, but we didn't. We had a 20-man match where we used absolutely everybody, and now we have no one left. So we'll see where it goes from here. After the match, so we get a replay of Bulldog whooping on Jannetty. Jerry the King interviews Owen Hart and Jim Cornette. Owen tells us he's going to win the Intercontinental title because he is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Do you have thoughts on this, Joseph?
That was literally the only note that I took was that portion of the segment. I think it's fine. I think it's a C+ for me. It's nothing amazing, but Owen is always interesting, at least. So it's fine.
We got a Survivor Series update, though, next. They're telling us all about it. Gorilla Monsoon has set up a wild card match, probably because he thought it would be neat. And this match is wild, Joseph. I'm going to give Gorilla Monsoon credit where credit is due. This is wild, and it is a wild card because we got Shawn Michaels, we got Sid, the British Bulldog, and Ahmed Johnson on the same team versus Dean Douglas, Yokozuna, Owen Hart, and Razor Ramon. Talk about a team of rivals. This is crazy.
Yeah, I think the idea is very sound. I don't, we haven't gotten to it yet. I don't think the execution will be great, but I think the idea is very interesting. You can tell that they're really kind of swinging for the fences on the kind of idea of we've always done it this way. So what if we just do little tweaks and see what happens? And it looks like right here, they're really trying. Like, okay, what if we did this? It's an almost Dusty Rhodes style idea. Like I could imagine Dusty Rhodes thinking of it. I think he probably would have executed it better because I just think he's a better mind. But I think it's a fun idea. I don't think it'll work, but I think it's a fun idea.
We'll see how it goes, but not yet because we're interrupted, and we're interrupted by Bob Backlund, and he's still running for president, Joseph, and he's campaigning. But as Vince notes, we're in Canada, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You got anything to say about this?
I have nothing to say about it.
And that tells you how Joseph feels about it. But he's interrupted our Survivor Series update. So now we got to go back. We got to go back to find out more. We go back to the Survivor Series promo, and we've got Ahmed Johnson. And he's telling Shawn Michaels, don't worry about it, buddy. I got your back. But if Bulldog and Sid, if they mess around, they better watch out because they will learn the meaning of, quote, true evil. How about that, Joseph?
You actually got that completely incorrectly.
What?
The actual quote is, Survivor Series, Shawn, don't even sweat it. I got your back. Sid, Bulldog, you think for 1 minute you're going to play that tag game? You're not going to be there for us, brother. I will show you the true meaning of medieval.
Of medieval? Whoa.
Yep.
That's even wilder than my note.
So I think at this point, you and I have a running joke. To be fair, it's your joke, but you get it with me every week. What is your idea for Ahmed Johnson?
Ahmed Johnson should be Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction. And the line that always comes to my mind that he should use as his guiding principle is at the end of the movie when Marcellus Wallace says, I'm pretty damn far from okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in depth the other week. It might have been the other day, but we talked about how Ahmed Johnson, his promos, like they're not horrible, like the ideas behind them, but he does the standard wrestler thing where I gotta talk as loud and fast as I can. I'm gonna tell you every single thing that I need to tell you right now, and every single moment of this promo is gonna be memorable because I'm saying it really, 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 really quick. But it's like, actually, I didn't know what the hell you just said. And I think if you took that idea of that Marcellus Wallace character, who's very slow and methodical, everything he says in that movie has a point. If you did that with Ahmed Johnson, because Ahmed Johnson, from a purely visual perspective, is fantastic. And I think if you let him slow it down and just, I mean, these are segments that are recorded well in advance. So just slow it down. You do the take. Hey, that was great. I want you to make it slower. Do the take. Hey, that's great. I want you to make it slower. And just keep doing it until he gets to the right rhythm. And then play it back for him and go, this is what you should be every single time. Because he'd be so much cooler if he was just slow and methodical.
You're absolutely right. Ahmed Johnson looks like the perfect wrestler. He has a great look. You know, we were talking about how you mentioned a couple of days ago how he's got like knee pads on his upper thigh, which is kind of crazy and unnecessary, but it looks great. Like just everything about his look looks good. He's a big buff meaty guy. He is a perfect, tough guy, unstoppable force kind of wrestler. He just is terrible on the mic, and they either need to coach him or find someone to do it for him because it's not good. This segment wasn't as bad as other segments. I thought this segment was better than most Ahmed Johnson segments. We watched a couple, we're ahead, and we watched a couple of pretty bad Ahmed Johnson segments just a couple of days ago. But he needs help because otherwise, I think he's got it. He's got the look. He's got some good moves. He just needs some help on the mic. After that, though, because we've used the entire roster for the first match, we have the debut of Avatar. He's going up against Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh botches a lot of stuff, and Avatar not great either. But Avatar defeats Brian Walsh in 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Joseph, break it down for me.
So Avatar, who is Al Snow, that's who it is. And I don't think he's been the Al Snow character yet. I can't remember, honestly. I'll have to look at it. I don't know if Al Snow was a character that was created in WWF or ECW. I'm not sure. I think it was ECW. But anyways, that's who it is. That's his most known character. He comes out maskless, and I think that's a horrible idea for a masked character. And then he puts on his mask when the match starts. And then it's not a very good match. It's also very clear that he can't really see through the mask, because there's a moment where he actually falls off the top rope. Like he was trying to do a springboard move, and he jumps up and he cannot see his footing, and he falls, and he luckily does so safely. He doesn't like hurt himself, but then he has to just do some improv in that moment and just decide on a different move. It's really messy. And then he wins and he takes off his mask, and it's like, I don't really know what's going on here. Brian Walsh is just a jobber. It gets a D for me. It probably deserves an F, but I like Al Snow a lot, so it doesn't get an F. I think I don't even know what we're doing here at this point.
Well, we got nothing. That's the problem. We have no wrestlers. WWF's depth is incredibly shallow. They have almost no roster to speak of. It's really the same 5 or 6 guys every night. We see every night. They cleared out their entire locker room for this 20-man battle royale. So this is what we got. And what we've got up next are cardboard cutouts and videotapes, Joseph. I assume you don't have anything to add to this part, but I'll give you a shot. Any thoughts?
Nope.
You don't want a cardboard cutout of Shawn Michaels for $25? Good deal.
I would love a cardboard cutout of Shawn Michaels for $25. Unfortunately, it's like $200 on eBay now, so I don't love it that much.
Well, when they invent time travel, your first act in time traveling will be to go back and call that number and get that $25 cardboard cutout.
That's the kind of selfishness I love.
There you go. Next up, we have an Alundra Blaze training vignette. She's kicking a lot. We got a lot of kicks in there. At the announce table, we are hyping the Intercontinental title match for next week. We talk about how Sean forfeited the title, and Goldust is going to take on Savio Vega. The match itself, though, Alundra Blaze is going up against Bertha Faye with Harvey Wimpleman by her side. They're wrestling for the WWF Women's Championship. It's a 9-minute match. Alundra Blaze defeats Bertha Faye. And I think you've got quite a bit to say about this, Joseph, so I'm going to let you have it.
Thanks, man. So from a pure match perspective, if we're just talking about in-ring action and get the B, I think both women do a very good job. It's funny because I just connected the dots right now. Because they use their entire roster, they actually had to call the only women they have on their roster and say, we need you to have a match. I mean, this is the first women's match, unless I'm mistaken. I think it's the first women's match in 2 months. And it's like insane. There's the things that I really hate about this match are pretty much exclusively commentary. You and I have talked about this, personally in the past. I have no problem putting this on mic. Whoever decided that Jerry the King Lawler, probably Jerry the King Lawler, should be such a friggin' pig is the worst, and I hate it. So, like, for whatever reason, he's always had a problem with Alundra Blaze. Like, the minute she debuted in WWF, she was a heel. So he made some comments about her that were negative, and specifically about her appearance. I kind of understand because she's a heel, so you make comments about heel, just like we talked about with Sister Sherry earlier. I don't like him, but I kind of understand the idea. But now he's a heel and she's a face, so he's making comments about her. He says there's 3 comments that happen in a row, and they're like really close in a row. The first one is Alundra Blaze looks like a linebacker in a cheap way. The second one is the more I look at Alundra Blaze, she should stay in Canada. She'd look better with a goalie mask on. And the third one is look at that nose Alundra Blaze has. She looks like Bullwinkle the Moose. And my notes that followed this were she's literally gorgeous. Again, she's gorgeous after the second note. And then the third note was, what the fuck is wrong with Jerry the King Lawler? You might have to bleep that out. It doesn't make any sense. It's a weird thing, and he'll do this the entire, and I will call it out every single time. So if you're like one of those guys who's like, oh no, misogyny is great, you're going to hate me because I'm going to call this out every single week. It's insane. I remember when I was a kid, I've talked about this with Scott. There's a wrestler, Molly Holly, fantastic wrestler. When I was a kid, I was convinced that Molly Holly was incredibly unattractive and very fat because of the comments that Jerry the King Lawler would make. And then one day I'm watching the WWE Hall of Fame, and I don't know if she got inducted or if she was inducting somebody. I know she's been inducted since, but I don't remember which one came first. And I remember going, who the hell is that? And it turns out it was Molly Holly, and she's freaking stunning. And I was like, wow, she really had a glow up. And then I went back and looked at like her when I was a kid, and I was like, no, she's always been gorgeous. He would just make the most horrible things. And you have, this is, most of these shows are for kids, right? They're more mostly kids and families and stuff like that. You have impressionable people who are having to listen to this. And a lot of the way that they view women come from comments like this, and the ideas that come into play when people like Jerry the King Lawler make these comments, and they're absolutely asinine. So it absolutely aggravates me to watch it. If you put this match on mute, it's probably an A match, but the commentary is so bad, and it's not just, oh, I'm a heel. I would be okay with it if he was saying what a horrible person she is. Like Bobby the Brain Heenan does a great job of this. Bobby the Brain Heenan is the heel commentator in WWF. When he makes comments about wrestlers, it's, Hulk Hogan's a great example. He's really, an absolute, piece of filth. He, you can't trust him. He's two-faced, blah, blah, blah. All great comments because you're the heel and you should have that idea. But what you don't hear is, wow, he's gained a lot of weight recently. Or when is he going to, shave the rest of his head because he's got a bald spot? I mean, actually, that one you might hear, to be fair. But you don't hear these horrible, horrible comments. but you do hear it with the women at this time, and it sucks. And Jerry the King leads the way with it, and it really, really is unfortunate. And if you read her book, Medusa's, I believe it's The Woman Who Would Be King, I believe is what it's called. Uh, she has a huge problem with it in person. I don't think she has anything nice to say about Jerry the King Lawler in general. And I can see why. I mean, her whole career is like this. And I said it the first time we saw her on this program. She is by far women's wrestling in North America at this point. She is the only thing going on right now. And you're treating her like this. And it's horrible, and I hate it. The match gets a B, though, because it is a good match.
You talked about this is the first women's match you think you've seen in 2 months or so. Is this the first? This might be the second. I feel like this is the second women's match we've seen on WWF, period. I think, wasn't there another Bertha Faye Alundra Blaze match before this?
The one they had before this was at SummerSlam, so this would have preceded the Monday Night Wars. But
so
I think
this is the first one we've seen.
Yeah, but I think there might have been one in early November with Bertha Faye, or not early November. I'm sorry, early September. I think there was one with Bertha Faye. If not, the first one that's happened in 2 months for sure because of SummerSlam.
So that tells you how depleted their roster is, where they have to call in the, and this is not serious. I'm joking, everybody. The broads, because they don't know how to wrestle. There certainly is you're right. There certainly is a chauvinism about in wrestling at this point. It's wrong, because Alundra Blaze is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and I think Bertha Faye wrestles very well too. I think she's a good wrestler. I think they're a good matchup, and I actually enjoy watching them wrestle. You mentioned this time in wrestling, and I don't know if you recall this, but the way this all kind of came together is during the pandemic. Joseph called me up and said, "Hey, me and a couple of friends are watching. AEW's just started, and me and some friends are watching it. It's like WCW in the good old days. You need to tune in and watch it with us." So we started watching it together because it was something to do during the pandemic. And I grew up watching the Attitude Era. That's when I guess I started with WCW, and I watched WCW through NWO, and then once kind of NWO died out and WCW started taking a turn, I switched over and watched the Attitude Era at WWF. And I think you remember I had an aversion to watching women's matches. Like I didn't want to watch them at first. And I didn't want to watch them at first because in my head, what I remembered women's matches being was just TNA fests, because that's all women's matches in the Attitude Era largely was just an excuse to show boobs and all kinds of stuff, and for Jerry Lawler to be a pervert and yell puppies and all this nonsense. And so I had this complete aversion to women's wrestling until we watched AEW, and I said, "Oh man, these ladies can really wrestle. These are good matches." And that's the realm that we're living in right now, where they just don't care about women's wrestling, and it's very clear. I'm surprised, frankly, that this was the main event for the night. I think it was probably the main event because they had nothing else. And as you said, WCW kind of has this mindset still at the time where the first match of the night is the main event. So maybe this wasn't as big a deal booking this as the last match. But yeah, the whole situation was.
Yeah, I don't know. Intentional to make this the main event. I don't think that was by any stretch like, hey, this is the thing we really want people to tune into. WWF hasn't gotten to the point yet where they're completely out on women's wrestling and sexualizing it. But we're so close. We are so close. And there's going to be some debuts that happen soon where that becomes the push. And unfortunately, WCW will follow suit. And then it's going to be that way for a long time. And let me be very clear. I don't blame any of the women who were in those roles for being in those positions that they were in, doing what they did. If you didn't have, women like Sable and, in the future, I'm trying to think of some women who really didn't wrestle too much. Like Maria Kanellis is a good one. Much later, she was really just eye candy. She's become a great character in recent years. When she kind of went on to the independents, she got married, has a family. She's doing really well. Christy Hemme was another one that was really just kind of eye candy There was Candice Michelle. So there's a number of women who are like that, and in between kind of all those women, there were just random women who really were, as much as they could be, and they still had to be sexualized, but devoted to the craft of wrestling. And I would say people like Victoria, Trish Stratus, Lita, Mickey James, a number of others. And without all those women who had to kind of deal with that, and I really do mean the women who had to deal with the sexualization and just be eye candy. If you didn't have those women, we would never have gotten to the point where we have what was called the women's revolution that happened I think a little less than 10 years, maybe a little bit over 10 years ago, where you started having these phenomenal female athletes become the big wrestlers like Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair. And then, AEW's got Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa and all those women. That never would have happened if, unfortunately, didn't have to go through all this. So I probably won't be spending much time talking negatively about any of the women who did these things, because it's not their fault. This is the position they were in. But I will damn sure talk negatively about the booking and Jerry the King Lawler being a complete pig the whole time.
Yeah, it was the cost of doing business at the time. You can't really fault the women's wrestlers for doing what needed to be done to advance in the sport. And you're right, even in the Attitude Era, there were some really great female wrestlers that were great. They're still great. They just weren't treated real well. And it just wasn't my cup of tea, because even as a kid, I didn't like that stuff. That's not why I was watching wrestling. I wasn't there to, oogle the women. I was there for the silly storylines and the over the top action and kind of all that stuff. And so I never liked it. And I still don't. And here it was, WWF, October 23rd, 1995. But that's not it for the show, because we have a little bit more for you. Jim Ross sits down with Shawn Michaels for a very emotional interview. Shawn says he's one of the hardest workers in the game. He's ashamed of getting jumped. He calls Dean Douglas, quote, overrated. And he's glad Razor has the title now. Jim Ross asks Shawn when Shawn expects to be back. Shawn tells us he'll know more after he gets some tests done on Wednesday. Shawn says he can cry or be a man. And he's all cried out. Joseph, I'm going to need a minute. Can you tell us more?
There's not much more to say. It's a pretty short, simple segment. It's very good. It gets a B from me. I think HBK does a great job. This is one of those, I think we talked about this in Your House 4 thing. People were saying that he wasn't legitimately injured. Obviously, you and I don't agree with that. But even if he wasn't, god dang, does he do a great job right here. This is fantastic. Oh, and then I believe this closes out the show, right?
Yeah, after that, they hype next week again, and we're out.
Yeah, so overall, the show gets a D+ from me. And the plus is exclusively because of Alundra Blaze and Bertha Faye having a pretty decent match. Oh, and Owen. I'll give Owen some of that plus too.
Not all the wrestling was bad. It was just poorly handled. But you're right. That does bring us to the end of WWF Raw. Now it's time to discuss who we think won and what the people thought. Joseph, who won?
In my opinion, even though it had a pretty horrible middle, I think WCW won this week.
I agree. There were some downers on WCW, but overall the matches were good. The wrestling was good. We had a lot of great guys. Even the Dungeon of Doom stuff, when we first watched the Dungeon of Doom stuff, this part right here, oh my God, did I hate it. And I still hate it. But there's a part of me that just thinks it's so stupid that I can't find myself completely hating it, right? There's just a little bit of, I don't know, charm or cheese to it that I'm like, this is horrible. It's some of the worst storytelling I've ever seen. And I don't completely hate it, and I can't explain it.
Well, that's what we thought, Scott. What did the people think?
Well, tell me, Joseph, what was the Nielsen for Raw?
Nielsen for Raw this week was 2.2, so they dropped.
The Nielsen for WCW was 2.6. People are hot for that Yeti.
I think if they knew the Yeti was coming, they probably wouldn't have been so hot.
I don't know about that, man.
Fair
I
enough.
don't know about that. But we'll find out more about the Yeti at Halloween Havoc. That brings it to a close for us. I'm Scott. This is Joseph. Good night, everybody.
Well, real quick, Scott, before we go.
Oh, what the hell?
Before we go, I mentioned a story to you the other day, and you said, hey, should we give a shout out on the next episode? And I think that's a great idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It'll take up only a few seconds. So if for everybody else, I apologize. Just bear with me. So one of the listeners of our show is a gentleman named Nick Montes. He's a very, very kind gentleman. And he and his wife or girlfriend, partner, we'll say partner, I'm not sure what their exact relationship is. They had a child about a year ago, and their child was diagnosed with cancer, I believe, immediately. And I don't know if it was exactly to the extent of like, hey, your child's not going to live, but it was definitely a scary time for them. Since then, their child went through treatment, eventually went into remission, and is now cancer free. And the other day celebrated her first birthday. So Nick and Allison, and I believe Ashley is the partner. Allison, happy birthday from us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday. And I was mad at you for cutting in on my just clean outro. But for that, I can't fault you. That was a beautiful thing. Thank you for doing it. We did talk about it. I think it's great that you did it. Happy birthday. And that brings us to the end, ladies and gentlemen. See you next time.
Bye, guys. Hey everybody, it's Joseph. Did you like this podcast? Well, we hope that you did, and also that you join us every Monday for new episodes. You can listen to us on Spotify, and soon we'll explore other platforms to bring you episodes of the Monday Night Wars. Did you listen to this podcast and think, pretty sure they're wrong about that? Well, let us know. You can email us at mnwpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's mnwpodcast@gmail.com. And correct anything we messed up. Don't worry, you won't bruise our egos. You can also give us suggestions, follow the show, or even just reach out to us on the following platforms. On Twitter, you can reach us at MON Night Wars Pod. Again, MON Night Wars Pod. And on Instagram and Facebook, you can reach us at Monday Night Wars Podcast. And finally, if you feel like supporting this podcast and also getting bonus content, you can follow us on Patreon at Monday Night Wars Podcast. For the low price of $2 a month, you get every episode of the Monday Night Wars and also every breakdown of every WCW and WWF pay-per-view during this era, with more content to come. Again, and one last time, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We'll see you next Monday back here on the Monday Night Wars Podcast.